This is a presentation of the Sports Source Digital Network, presented by Hearthside Bank.
Welcome to Sports Source Hardball. I'm Will HEFLIN, joined as always by VFLS, AJ SIMCOX, and Andrew Lee. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Show support for channels like this one. Super. Vols feeling super. Let's talk about last night. What'd you see from the Wake Forest team, our team, the crowd? What stood out?
Yeah, the crowd was awesome. The energy was awesome. Fisher saying, hey, pack the house, be as loud as we can. And then in that huge moment, he hits that two-run bomb. And
after hyping up the crowd?
Yeah, after hyping up the crowd, pre-home run and post-home run during the trot.
Got called a name before his...
Allegedly. I don't know where it was directed. Could have been him.
Could have been anyone.
Could have been the umpire. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, I thought it was great. A win is a win. It doesn't matter how pretty, how ugly at this point in the year. It's survive and advance, you know?
Is it fair to say, Andrew, aside from the Gilbert Grand Slam, that was the loudest moment, right? Best moment in regional Tennessee history, Tennessee baseball history, like no close second, right? Mm-hmm. But I think it's fair to say sustained energy from that big inning on was the best environment that we've seen in Lindsey Nelson in postseason play.
I wouldn't be a stretch at all to say that. AJ and I had a text going during the game.
It was unbelievable.
You could see it coming. The moment was building. Manny Marin hits the unexpected home run. Andrew Fisher comes up. All the shenanigans going on with the pitchers' meetings and whatnot. And I texted him and said I would do some unspeakable things to have Andrew Fisher hit a home run here and watch this place explode. Sure enough, it happens. Fortunately, I didn't have to make any dirty deals for it to happen. But Andrew Fisher, Liam Doyle, I don't know how much they made in the transfer portal. Whatever the rumor was, they were 100% worth it. Have been 100% as advertised, deliver the moments, deliver the performances that everybody wanted. And that's the most sustained energy, like you said, that I've seen in Lindsey Nelson, at least since I've been a Tennessee fan, since I went there.
And both of them have taken big steps forward, too. I mean, they were both phenomenal players last year, but just the steps that they've taken, again, like you said, worth every penny. And I think they're incredibly thankful to be here, especially after hearing some of the comments that they made, especially Doyle after the game, and just his admiration and appreciation for Tony V and company.
And they're both big-time players, but let's talk about, real quick, we just need to, the freshman. Manny Marin, 3-run homer, first homer since March 8th is crazy. Backspin, what a perfect swing.
Yeah.
And 3-run homer, that was the difference in the game. Now, Tennessee was able to add on more, but, that gave us 6 runs, and Wake Forest, they may have scored 6 or 5. Anyways, Krenzel was phenomenal, best he's been since coming back from mono. Mm-hmm. Levi Clark gets on base a couple times. Like, these freshmen are growing up right in front of our eyes, and this time of year, you need it to come from different guys. You got to have different heroes every single game.
Well, we've been begging for the whole second half of the season during that skid that we were going through. We need production out of the bottom of the lineup. We need some of the freshmen to step up, whether it's on the mound or at the plate. And now we're starting to see that production. Our biggest complaint about the offense has been not being able to produce in important situations. Runners on second, nobody out. We got to score that run. Runners on second and third with 2 outs. Let's get them in, blow a game open. And yesterday we finally saw that come to a head. And it's got me feeling great about our prospects moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing. Like last year's team, there were so many guys that had been in the program for a long time. And then you had to replace just about all of them, right? I mean, you had a couple transfer pieces in as well, but the core group of those guys were guys that were developed in the program, contributed their freshman year. The team that they walked into was incredible, so they didn't get a lot of playing time, but they made the most of the playing time they did get. And then you lost a lot of that. And I think this year, they piecemealed a lot of it together through the portal. But I do think that moving forward, you have to really like where you're at. You've got a couple really good freshman arms that have pitched in high leverage situations now. You've had 3 or 4 guys in the lineup that are freshmen throughout the year that have contributed. And so moving forward, you do really like where you're at. You bring in another piece or two from the portal like they've done. And the future's looking bright.
Quite the different feeling and mindset looking at this baseball team than a couple weeks ago. It truly is a postseason sport. Mm-hmm. Vols going to their 5th straight super. That's ridiculous in and of itself. But let's preview Arkansas a little bit. First, the bad. What worries you going into this series, Andrew?
What worries me, our last performance at Arkansas, number 1, came out, especially on Sunday. I don't want to say flat, but we got thoroughly controlled by Arkansas. They were putting up runs, we weren't. So that, I would say, momentum. Arkansas has been cruising, especially through their regional. Their offense is humming. Our bullpen is still a question mark. Now, we saw a great performance out of Tanner Franklin, Dylan Loy, but if we run into a speed bump in a Marcus Phillips game or a Liam Doyle start, still a little bit worried about the bullpen. A little bit more confident maybe now that Arvidsson seems to be clicking. We have A.J. Russell back there, a couple secret weapons. But their bats, I would say, are the number one thing that scare me.
Be interesting to see what they do with A.J. Russell for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, it will be, and it's, in the course of the season, if we're in the regular season, I think it's penciled in this weekend. Phillips would start the first game, Doyle would start the second game, and then Russell's penciled in as the third day guy for sure. But with it being all hands on deck, not guarantee that you get to the third game, I think it'll be very similar to how they did the regional, where Russell's going to be the first guy out if it's a competitive game, and you need to either keep a lead and be able to extend it, or you've got to hold them where they're at to give your offense a chance. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and just going into the weekend, Arkansas really one of probably 2 teams, them and Auburn, to kind of have a sweat-free regional weekend, so they're rested. And they're getting an extra day. I think starting on Saturday helps Tennessee.
Yeah.
Because Doyle gets an extra day.
Absolutely.
Russell gets an extra day. That was the most he was taxed all year. But Arkansas, arguably the most talented team. I think Tennessee and Arkansas both in the top 3 in terms of favorites to win the whole thing. Interesting that they're playing each other before Omaha. But Arkansas, they're going to be rested. They're playing really clean right now, and they're the most talented. So, I mean, home field advantage, we can talk about whether that helps Arkansas or Tennessee, but at least on paper, you got to give the rest and just the ability to kind of cruise through their regional and not have to play last night is a slight edge for the Razorbacks for sure.
And who knows, maybe it's a situation where because they've been on cruise control a little bit, maybe they come out flat. I can't imagine anybody coming out flat for a super regional, but if we're using like the NBA playoff debate, rest versus rust, Tennessee was fighting for their life a little bit more. Maybe that's a little bit of edge we need. Maybe I'm just making things up to try and give us an edge here.
I think you can spin it to where they cruised and we didn't, but that gave us a real opportunity to learn who our guys were, right? I mean, Arvidsson pitched really well. Krenzel pitched really well. Franklin pitched really well, left the ball for the most part on the edges instead of over the plate. And so that gives you more confidence in those guys that you might not have had without that final game. And so I think, and it gave not that you're worried about Doyle or Russell, but it just, I think, solidified some of the confidence and maybe tools in the tool belt that Frank and Tony can have moving forward. As far as like overly concerned, I do think, looking back to the previous series, chances are Doyle's not going to get hit like that again, right? So if Marcus Phillips continues to pitch the way that he has over the last 3 weeks, I'd say you're actually feeling pretty confident going in. The offense has been clicking a lot better. You're still going to have the underlying issues, just that's the nature of the beast. One weekend isn't going to fix that. It still might be in the back of the mind, but they're trending the right direction. They're playing well, and I think they learned a little bit about who is who in the bullpen.
No errors last night, which is huge. I think the biggest last concern I have is obviously Peebles was ejected last night.
Yeah.
Very unfortunate given the circumstances of the game. Now he's got to miss game 1. Stone Lawless, if it is Phillips, has caught him a lot. Caught him probably 6 or 7 times before Peebles took over all 3 weekend games as the starting catcher. So I don't really have a worry defensively on Stone, but Peebles has been very clutch. Had some huge doubles in game 1 and game 2, big swings, and he's put together a ton of just grinded out long at-bats, which you need, especially down in the order. And so it's a big opportunity for Stone Lawless, but I think not having Peoples for game one is certainly a concern for me.
Absolutely. And then you wonder, does that even factor into who's going to throw on Friday? Saturday. Stone hasn't really caught Liam this year. Right. So does that factor into the decision if we're going Liam versus Marcus? I doubt it, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind. And like you said, even when Cannon wasn't getting a hit in an at-bat, driving up pitch counts, drawing walks, like getting people on base at the bottom of the order is the name of the game to a certain extent. And he helps to turn that lineup over. And it brings up a point that I know AJ wants to touch on of, are players getting too hot-headed during games? Is the NCAA too soft when they hand out these penalties? I'll let you dive into that, AJ.
I think it's a little bit of both, and it's not just Tennessee. Like, it's all across the regionals, right?
There were a lot of ejections
There's an insane amount of ejections. Some tempers are running high. Emotion is at an all-time high. I mean, we saw it with Doyle. You see it with Fisher. We got an ejection. There was a couple other ejections across. And I feel like players have to tone it down a little bit. You want to see it, right? Like, it's incredible. Keep it more towards your team and maybe just tone it down a little bit. Mm-hmm. Do I think that the umpires need to have more feel in those situations? Absolutely. But at the same time, you can't put them in a position to make those decisions. And so I do think it's kind of the responsibility of everyone. Now, I do think, like the Duke guy, he got ejected because he brought a prop onto the field.
He brought his hard hat with him.
He brought his hard hat with him after celebrating a play that he wasn't even involved in, but he had it on because he hit a home run his previous at bat. He went 2 steps onto the warning track.
And he had taken it off.
Yeah, he had taken it off, 2 steps onto the track, and he gets ejected. The rule says that it could lead to an ejection. It doesn't say that it's an automatic ejection. And in that situation,
be looking for that.
100%. You know what I mean? The umpire's got to have feel. Peebles, I don't know what all was said. I know it was directed towards the catcher. Mm-hmm. I do know, too, with Levi Clark, his second at bat, he threw the bat down because he was pissed because he got hit twice up and in. He didn't say a single word.
He was just mad.
Absolutely frustrated because he got hit with 2 pitches up and in. He's not thinking it's intentional. It's just 97 to the shoulder or to the back hurts.
Yeah, and he's frustrated.
Conti, the Wake Forest catcher, is the one who initiated that.
Right.
He also initiates with Cannon Peebles.
Yeah.
Yet now we're punished for it.
The retaliation.
The retaliation.
Deal is always,
and I think there needs to be, the NCAA needs to kind of grow up, for lack of a better term.
Yeah,
and
good luck getting that.
There doesn't need to be a 1-game suspension,
automatic
ejection.
Yeah, we have the manpower to review each case and have some feel.
Especially in the playoffs, because I mean these kids work so hard. Like we've talked about earlier, they're so emotional. It's such high stakes, and it's getting chirpier and chirpier. Like even if you do get ejected, if it's not for something just absolutely egregious, I don't think you should be suspended for the next game, at least not automatically. And I mean, we've seen it over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. It happened to Drew Gilbert. It happened to Clemson when we played in that regional.
Was it Cam Cannarella?
Well, that's what we were trying to remember earlier.
I know it was a center fielder.
Yeah, he left his position, so it probably was. Yeah. And he missed the next game. We benefited from that.
Right.
But the fact that the Duke guy is not going to be able to play the first game of the series because
the Oregon kid who was ejected for sliding in
the
home.
He didn't get to play and so I think it's an NCAA thing that they have got to fix that rule. I mean, professional sports, you get ejected, you're not suspended the next day. Like the NBA, you have to reach a certain amount of technicals, and then if it's egregious, then the MLB will review it and maybe figure out what's reasonable. But just for how much these kids work and for how long they work to get caught up in the heat of the moment, an umpire might have a quick trigger, or just potentially just not being able to, just
not to get
smooth it out.
Yeah.
And let's let everyone continue to play. I mean, I just think there's some holes that need to be fixed.
Not to get too deep into it, but you kind of see it in the March Madness tournament where you have officials that are from other leagues, sort like divvied up, and so it's the same in baseball where you have umpires that may have been umpiring on the West Coast and now they're doing an SEC versus ACC matchup. You saw, I believe it was Auburn, Florida in the Final Four where they had a different crew, and it's just a foul fest. Like that's part of it. Like if an umpire's not used to SEC level,
it just
baseball,
means more.
It truly does, and Wake Forest plays in the ACC. That's the closest thing to it, right? So they're used to playing in those heated environments too. And like, I really didn't have a huge problem with any of it last night. So you you got to have a little bit of feel, but I think we're beating a dead horse. That's not going to change, so we have to make the adjustment.
Yep.
We, as in Tennessee's players and other teams' players as well. Like, you just have to. Well, you have to understand.
You saw after Doyle's strikeout, I guess in the 8th inning, right?
Vitello was meeting him on the foul line.
Vitello was almost on the mound, right?
Well, for a pitcher, it's.
Well, it only would have been one game.
It would have been one as a reliever.
Because of a reliever,
but as a starter, it would be 4.
100%. And so, so he would have missed a start.
Yeah, unbelievable. This episode of Hardball is brought to you by the Garza Law Firm. When you need an attorney, look for the best and be sure they're local. That's Marcos Garza and the Garza Law Firm, proud supporters of Tennessee baseball. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about why we feel good about this series headed into Arkansas. For me, it just starts with if you can put the pressure on them, that home crowd turns into a pressure cooker, and Arkansas is certainly capable of playing tight. We've seen it in that stadium over the past couple years, haven't been able to get to Omaha as a national seed. I think if you're Tennessee, you gotta lean into that. I do think playing on Monday and what transpired last night can be an advantage for Tennessee, just because you needed that gelling win, that hang your hat on this this team to really have a defining moment, if you will. And I think Tennessee can use that as momentum headed into this series because they'll match up with anybody, right? Yep. Arkansas is the most talented. Tennessee, you could argue, is just as talented, or maybe slightly.
Well, and Kyle Peterson said that on the broadcast yesterday.
Maybe more in terms of draft prospects, but I think everybody would agree Arkansas may be the more well-rounded team right now. But I think Tennessee's got some mojo, got some moxie, whatever you want to call it. They got the ability to go in there and kind of play spoiler and put all the pressure on the home team, because this is the defending national champs. You're essentially playing with house money. Yeah. I know the expectation here is Omaha and to be competing for national champions, but you won it last year, right? So everything is gravy. Arkansas, you're still trying to get over that hump, and that can weigh on them. So Tennessee can use that as their advantage. That's off the jump what I see as the positive headed into this weekend.
And it's at this point you're 2 wins away from Omaha. Yeah. We have 2 horses that are going to run for us the first 2 games. I'm super confident behind Liam Doyle and Marcus Phillips. And now that we have the combination of Russell, Arvidsson, a couple more arms in the bullpen, I feel relatively confident in Game 3 too. So, I mean, like you said, we have the talent, we have the tools. It takes 2 wins at this point in the season. I feel immensely better about this matchup after the last 2 games that Tennessee's played than I would have maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last week, right, going into the regional, that we thought A.J. Russell was going to be the X factor in it, and it kind of proved to be true. I think he's going to be the X factor this weekend as well. You expect Marcus to give you a good start, probably go 6, maybe 1, 2, 3 runs. It's going to be a quality start, give you a chance. And then it'll be interesting to see what happens. Do they bring Russell in or how they handle it? But him being able to extend the last 2 outings and then come back on Sunday, or I guess yesterday, and start that game gives you a lot of confidence. And like I said, it gives Tony V and Frank a lot of options. The offense has been playing a lot better. They've been hot the last 6-7 games, minus that 1 game against Vandy. And, I think yesterday, too, they came from behind. They got punched in the mouth early, that 2-run bomb.
2-0.
And they battled right back. And so it was impressive. I think we're in a good spot. Marcus has started to control the run game a lot better. It hasn't been an issue the last 3-4 starts. And he's just going to continue to get better. Doyle's going to be Doyle. I highly doubt we'll see another start like he had against Arkansas a couple weeks ago. And so I think we're in a good position.
Bounce back spot for sure for him. Tennessee has the chance to be the much looser team. They played really loose last night. That's something they've always been able to do under this coaching staff. And for me, one thing I saw last night, guys like Fisher, even Inslee, who struggled over the regional, had a huge hit, and Dean Curley, and it can be some other guys, but you're starting to see guys take over the role of, I'm not letting us lose. And I think if you have those characters leading the way of they're not going to let Tennessee lose. And you had that in Semo and Burke and Dreiling, and you've had that with with Gilbert and other guys in the past. And sometimes you do ultimately lose. But to be in the fight and to have guys that you know are somehow going to find themselves up in the right opportunity, that's what you just need and yearn for a postseason sport like this one. Because this tournament has been ridiculous. And for Tennessee to do what they did, and then you look around the country and realize how not easy it was. Georgia, national seed, host, they're done. Ole Miss is done. Texas is done. Vanderbilt's done. 9 of the SEC's 13 teams are out. There's only 4 left. So there can be at most 3 SEC teams make Omaha, which is kind of less than usual, but I think it just speaks to the parity of this tournament and how crazy it was this year, maybe even more so than normal years. So let's touch on that a little bit. Like, what did you see watching around the country? I mean, some phenomenal baseball all weekend long. But did you take anything away from it? Was it surprising that 9 of the 13 are bounced?
Maybe more so who got bounced. Vanderbilt, who was probably the most consistent team down the stretch, just could not get anything going with the bats at home, of all places, and against pitching that maybe was not what you would consider top tier. I think the guy for Wright State that shut them out for the majority of the game had a 6 or 7 ERA coming into there.
8.
Got it down. It was an 8.9, wasn't it?
It came down way down.
And then Texas, who kind of got surprised by UTSA, jumped on. Maybe those two, from a talent perspective. Georgia has been more of a we're just going to outbash you team, so maybe that wasn't surprising. But the overall amount of talent that got bounced was surprising to me. And like you said, it speaks to maybe the parity or lack of consistency that teams have had throughout the season this year. And it wasn't just the SEC, even though we're going to pick on them. A lot of national seeds ended up either getting put to the losers bracket and getting pushed to that final test, or couldn't even make it out or couldn't make it to the regional final.
Well, yeah, and everyone, correct me if I'm wrong here, but Georgia, it was the Ole Miss regional. It was Georgia Tech, Ole Miss, Murray State, right?
And Western Kentucky.
And Western Kentucky, yeah. So Western Kentucky was an incredible team all year. Georgia Tech won the ACC. Ole Miss was the host. Everyone's only going to talk about Murray State beating Ole Miss, but that was a gauntlet of a regional. That was probably top to bottom the hardest regional that there was. UTSA has been an incredible team all year as well. I mean, they were one of the best teams in the country. There's a lot of teams in college baseball that, you know, the average fan, or if somebody's not really following that closely, they don't understand how good some of these mid-major teams are. Baseball's even more so than basketball. Like, we talk about how March Madness, right? And it has lived up and earned that name through and through, time and time again. But I would argue that baseball's even more so like that. I mean, it takes one good pitcher that's on one day with an 8.9 ERA to bounce the number 1 overall seed. In basketball, you see that. But in baseball, like all across the board, there's so many good teams and so many good baseball players. And at the mid-major level now, you know, everyone's talking about NIL and these guys transferring out. Well, UTSA had 2 or 3 of their top stars transfer out last year. The coach, after they won the Super Regional, said, you know, if they want to transfer out, that's fine. We're going to look for the next guy and replace them. And they did. There's just so much talent across the board. Now, I do think that it is a little shocking that the SEC did get bounced like they did, but, I mean, it's still far and away the best conference in college baseball. Anyone that says otherwise, you're wrong. Sorry.
Well, even with the 4 that are remaining, you've got Tennessee or Arkansas. So you'll have at minimum 1 SEC team make it, and whichever team comes out of that Super is going to be the favorite.
Yep. Them
or LSU, you could argue, but LSU and Auburn are both in the top 5 of everybody who's left to win the whole thing. So the heavy hitters, maybe, you know, the national seeds were a little wonky this year. I don't think anybody argued that Vanderbilt was the best team all year long, but if you had to do a power ranking, I think the top 4 SEC teams, or at least 4 of the top 6-ish, are moving on. And so I'm a little bit surprised that one of the SEC teams that didn't host didn't get through.
Yep.
But again, just a very compelling tournament. It was very wild. West Virginia won that regional at Clemson. They're going to go to LSU. That's not a team to scoff at. They've been able to fight all year long, and it's just been fun. And I think that Duke Murray State Super Regional is just kind of awesome. But you know, it's going to be a phenomenal weekend, and it's really interesting to see how Omaha is going to shake up because the winner of the Fayetteville Regional is matched up with the winner of the Baton Rouge Regional for Game 1 of Omaha. So, like, these powerhouses are running into each other. There's no collision course for the national championship, kind of like last year where you kind of had a couple on each side. Like, it's going to be very interesting, and we could see a surprising finals this year in a way that we haven't seen because SEC's won the last 6, and the last few years have been SEC versus SEC in the finals. We may not get that this year, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, but you get let's say three SEC teams make the College World Series. That's
One
still,
of them's getting there.
Yeah, one of them's getting there, but if 3 of the 4 get there, I mean, that's an incredible feat in and of itself.
It is. It'll be like that every year. Let's wrap this up. We appreciate everybody for listening. Again, like and subscribe, show support for channels like this one. We'll be back with you next week to recap the Super Regional.